Welcome to the Breaking Views. I'm Teresa Fessenstein, here with my co-host Anthony Onesto. We've spent our careers in HR and people leadership, and each week we pull apart what's breaking in the news and talk about what it actually means for the teams doing the work. We're so happy you're here. Okay, welcome to the Breaking Views with Anthony Onesto and myself, Teresa Fessenstein. We're going to be talking on this podcast about things that are in the news that relate to, around, and for human resource teams, and probably a lot of AI. So, Anthony, how are you doing today?
I am good. Just got back. Took a little break. Went down to warmer climates in Florida. And by the way, when you said your last name, I'm like, oh, that's how you pronounce it. Wonderful, great. Good news there. I learned something new
Oh,
within 5 seconds. So anyway, I was in Florida for a couple of days, and ironically, I know we're going to talk a little bit about some of the Disney layoffs, but I was down in Disney and walked so many freaking steps and spent some time at the pool and got a little bit of a tan. So it was nice to kind of just cut off ties. It's just interesting. Like, I know we're going to talk a lot about security stuff and AI, but gotta be honest, it was nice to be off the grid and put my phone down and just kind of stare at space or read or be offline. So definitely got to do more of that. But how are you doing? How's your week?
good, good. It's funny you say that because you go back to these times when it's like, when we used to travel abroad, like it was literally like work got cut off, phones got cut off, everything's now like multiplied in connection. And so I think it is funny. So do you have like a requirement when you travel with your kids or whatever where it's like dad's putting phone away and gonna touch on work once a day, or like what's your rule of thumb?
Yeah, it depends, but I think the normal, what I tell people where I'm working is like, hey, I'm not going to be responsive during the day. And what I'll do is right before I go to bed, I'll scan emails or Slacks. And if there's anything specific you need me to react to or decide on in the moment, it's got to be emergency based and just like highlight it like, hey, please, like in the email, put it in the subject line, please review this or in the Slack, please review this. Otherwise, I'll come back and look at stuff. So it's kind of like that. And I would do that every night. It depends. Like it depends on the night and what we're doing on vacation. So that's typically the framework I've used. And that allows me the freedom. And in some cases I would delete my Slack
Mhm.
mobile app. So I would get rid of that because it takes what they say, it takes like 24 hours to kind of just come down from work.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I tried to do that with my mahjong game a few times, but let me tell you, my husband last night was like, "Hey, I thought you deleted that app," and I was like, "Click, click, click." It's like,
Yes, I did.
and then
I
I
need
couldn't
that
break it.
privacy. I need that new privacy thing that all the other phones have, so you can't see my mahjong.
That means I'd have to move away from the Apple family, and that would be rough. But it does
Yeah,
kind of bring up a good conversation around like as professionals, we've gone, at least I'm guessing through your career, certainly through mine, when having, we really did at the beginning of my career work during the day and then go home. My
yeah.
first job, I didn't have a personal computer. I didn't have a cell phone. I know it's shocking. That's how old I am. But now it's always on.
Did you like write on caves or something?
You
Like,
know what? When we did our calculations, it was all through an abacus. By the way, I asked my students, as those of you who know me know that I teach at a university as an adjunct, and I asked my students how many of them knew an abacus. It was a big old zero. I was like,
wow.
that
Okay,
to me was
that's
like,
fair.
okay,
Yeah,
it's not like I used one in my lifetime, really, but at least I
right.
knew about them and we used them in
Bet you
school.
they would know a printing press though, but that's interesting. Yeah,
So, but the idea of being always on, especially in our role, I was watching SVU yesterday, and it occurred to me that something happened. It was the middle of the night, and like all of like the sergeants and the lieutenants and everybody shows up, and there's this concept now of like we never have there is not a downtime, and even
yeah,
people I think that work hard to protect their time struggle with that because it's like this perpetual state of FOMO, and like if something happens, you need to be aware of it, and there's a cognitive load that that carries for us in terms of even when we're not on, we're on.
Yeah. And it was nice. There was a period of time where like you would fly and they didn't have internet in the airplanes and it would be a downtime. Like you would still be able to do maybe some work, but you didn't have that online. Or even like when you go into the subway in New York and you're offline for a period of time. It's kind of a nice getaway from all these things. And it's fascinating. I know you and I were at Transform a couple of weeks ago. I did a panel on Gen Z. One of the most interesting thing was like they're looking to get offline. Like, and this is a generation that was born, on the iPhone. So it's just interesting to see, and it is. I think we're going to see, and there's research on it. I'm part of MoMA, which is Mothers Against Media Addiction, a great effort. We're starting to see some of the lawsuits against some of the major tech players and how they're constructing their algorithms. So interesting to see that play out, and opening up a massive opportunity for people to start filing lawsuits here. But interesting thing is we're seeing in the research like you should just not be connected for a period of time, and I think we're gonna especially with AI, the internet is ubiquitous now. I think AI is becoming ubiquitous. So be interesting to see. Hopefully we don't look back in history and say this is the downfall of Western civilization, but who knows?
I don't know that it'll happen so fast that I'll be around to hear that, but in caring for
Right.
future generations, of course.
Yes, exactly.
No, I think I've heard that too. That sort of not maybe not so much about Gen Z, but Gen Alpha, whatever the next one be on that. Is it Alpha? I don't know what it is, but
It's alpha, yeah.
yeah, this idea of almost revolting against at the same like revolting against the things that they learn from their parents, they see their parents, that's like that is multi-generational reaction, right? And at the
Yeah.
same time, going back to some of my good friends, I was visiting my parents a few weeks ago and staying with some good friends, and their nephews are super into records now, like
Mm, yes.
45s and things that, that was like all
Tangibles,
of us
yep.
yeah, all of us had the entire shelf full of records when we were growing up. My husband and I just got a
Right.
record player at Christmas, like,
That's great. I was a
it
DJ, and I used to
you
have to
did?
carry around crates, and so whenever I see a DJ with just his or her MacBook, I'm, like, so like, to me, that I don't wanna go back there. I would
Yeah,
rather I'd rather have the technology and just carry around, thousands of records in my laptop, but anyway, yeah, it's pretty interesting to see that kinda movement.
yeah, we're kinda moving back, and it's curious to see what role systems and tech and AI are gonna kind of play in all that as
Oh, yeah.
generations like those that I'm educating in college are gonna enter the workforce with a completely different mindset. Anyway, let's talk about
Imagine just
go
a
ahead.
sidebar because you talked
Yeah.
about imagine being like an executive of a record company and you're like, all right, like few years ago, it's like everything is digital. Everything's gotta be digital. And now it's like, we gotta make records again. Like and I don't know if you saw, like I know we're getting to AI, like there's a bunch of CEOs now like exiting businesses and a lot of them are attributing it to AI. Like they just feel like maybe they're behind. So it's just interesting like these
It's
head swings.
actually
We think of like, the CEO space as being a space of protected bubble to an instance, but even that world is being impacted.
well, it's funny because I, had an opportunity to work with a really amazing organization a few weeks ago in Charleston. And before I left, I ran a workshop. And before I left, I was talking to the CPO, and he's like, okay, now they know. But he's like, oh, as a sidebar, I'm actually retiring. And I was a little shocked. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, good for you, always excited for that. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I've decided I'm letting all this AI stuff go to the younger generation. And I think there is in the same way my mom never, like, attached herself to a cell phone, she just, like, could never get into it. I know that there are a
Mhm.
lot of people that are, that whether it's, the take on it I thought was interesting, not because I can't figure it out, but because, like, maybe there's a sense of, like, I'm just fucking exhausted. Like, I've spent
Yeah,
my entire life working so hard, and now I've gotta figure out how to take on this whole new learning curve that I'm just not here for it. And
yeah,
I think it's funny because there's we're talking about breaking views and what's in the news and the media hype cycle. And I could go on a whole long tangent about the, the waves of content that's in the media hype cycle that gets people feeling fear, immobilized by fear, um, or just like over it. Like I just don't even want to hear it anymore. And I think that's where we're seeing whether it's CEOs or CPOs or, you know, people that have really accomplished a lot in their careers sort of opting out.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it's interesting, and I don't remember because coming in to my career, like, a couple of years pre-internet and then the internet, like, I don't remember this being that but again, I wasn't friendly with CEOs and C-level executives at that point in my career, but I don't even remember it, like, I think at that time, people took, Bezos and the Google folks, like, they saw opportunity, and I still believe that. I think that even though, much older now, it's like I see the opportunity with this technology, but like you said, some people are like, "You know what? Let's just leave that for other folks." And bless them. Evidently, they don't have 3 kids in college and they're paying for they can retire. Like, I don't think I'm ever retiring. So, anyway, and, it's so funny, even during COVID, there was a period of time where I went to a local bakery and I was talking to the owner and I was like, "Huh, I'm kinda jealous of the simplicity of your life. Like, you go in, you and you make a decent living, and you support your family, although that's getting harder and harder, but, like, and yeah, you have frustrated customers and you deal with all that stuff, but, like, the idea of, like, they're not taking on these big worldly especially during that time, I was like, "How do we manage COVID in a workspace?" Like, all these really big, meaty things, and I was like, "Oh, maybe that's" and I started even, like, exploring the purchase of a local bike shop at that time. Not that it would be more of a side gig for me, but anyway, it's just interesting to see, like, this movement happening.
I wonder actually if it's how people are wired. So, as what I like to call my first midlife crisis, I went to culinary school and worked in a Danny Meyer restaurant in New York City for a period of
Huh.
time in 2015 and 2016. And I was doing some, like, my side gig was uh, consulting in HR, and my work was going to school to become a chef and
Huh.
chefing. And you know, I thought that would be the case too. Like, I always looked at, like, folks that worked in more blue collar roles, right? Like, you get in, you work hard, you put your time in, and then you go home and you have some freedom. And, like, that didn't necessarily work that way for me because I'm still thinking about, like, and I think in some case it does have to do with a person's mentality around, like, anxiety or whatever is happening within them that makes them focus in on that. It's
Sure.
interesting. So you sent me before we started chatting a list of what was on your LinkedIn news, and one of the things I think is maybe a good conversation topic is um, one of the headlines was Amazon's Jesse tells shareholders to bet big on AI. First of all, I don't know who's not betting big on AI right now, but the conversation around, like,
What great advice.
yeah, wow, hey, what is that thing you're calling AI? Um, but, like, what about the burst of AI, the bubble bursting and the investment that's going in, the billions and billions and trillions of dollars that's being invested compared to the output that is actually the money that's being made, and where do you think that's gonna land, at least for now?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the same bet Bezos took on, Jassy obviously part of Amazon, but he took on the internet, right? Like, it's this evolution, like whatever AI is today, and you see it happening. I think it's at an acceleration point that was so much greater than the internet, right? If you look at the history of the internet, like Amazon started doing certain things and then they pivoted and now they're the juggernaut. It took a while. Like, I think this acceleration is so much faster. You see it every day, and it's almost this race where it's like, oh, it's Claude, it's Gemini, it's OpenAI, then OpenAI does something, and then it's open. Like, it's just like, where do I like? It's so jarring in terms of where all this is going. But I keep coming back to a place, where I'm seeing a lot of. Yeah, bet big on AI, and I think you'd be silly not to, but it's also like that humanity piece. I keep coming back to this place where, and it's frustrating because, and I'm not mad at the people, don't be mad at the player, be mad at the game. You know, public companies, even private companies, like CEOs are measured on their short-term performance. Like, like they're bonused on that. And so that's their focus. And so laying off people gets a bump in your stock price, whatever it is. Like, I get it. I don't love it. But I also think about like if you the CEOs that are out there that's like AI is taking everyone's job, and like if you're not like they're just the snake oil stuff that they're selling there. And I keep coming back to the fact of like, if no one's working, no one is investing. Like, if I'm not working, I'm either drawing back my money, my savings, or I can't afford anything. So I'm drawing back on my spending. Like, it starts dry. Like, every economy is a two-sided marketplace. So even if you have robots producing everything, who's consuming? Like, no one could afford anything anymore. And like, hey, your little SaaS platform that supports all these consumer companies, like that dries up when the consumer companies are starting to cut tools because no one's buying their shit. Like, are you not seeing that? And the thing is, they're not, because it's short-term gains. Like, the framework is all messed up. And so at some point we're going to get to a point where maybe we have record unemployment, and it's like, well, why is the consumer not spending as much as they once did? And then why aren't they invest, like all of this stuff?
They're all getting laid off.
Yeah, like I'm going to draw down my 401k, which puts into funds and like, pensions and all this sort, like everything, and we've relied on these investments, listen, we talk a lot about the LPs and the rich folks, but it's also like these teacher funds and all these things that are in hedge funds and all, like they spark innovation, and you invest in research in these things, and you think of taxes, like all and this, I'll go down a rabbit hole on this stuff often, and I'll be like, can't you see that it's AI and people, not necessarily just AI? So it's interesting. Like, duh, yeah, you should take an investment in AI and bet big, but let's keep coming back to like, why aren't we talking about the human piece of this and the impact there? So anyway, that I've been thinking a lot about that specifically around AI.
I think there's so much, especially with especially in tech, but even beyond that, of a keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, what are they doing? And so we're going to do that because so and so said that's the direction they're going. This conversation around like who's going to be the purchaser, because we have no employees anymore. And I think that goes into this conversation about Disney, you know, preparing for more layoffs. We saw Block cut 40% of its workforce recently. We've seen, gosh, Amazon, AWS. So the number of layoffs. I was talking to a friend the other day, and the largest company that I've ever worked in was about 3,500 people. So I've never worked for like a 15,000. She works for um she was with IPG, now she's with the newly combined Omnicom Media Group, which is 128 right now, 1,000 employees.
Yeah.
They think with this combination, it's gonna go down to 108 was the number that I heard. But I was thinking about, like, number 1, the decision to lay off that number of people. What I believe, again, goes into what I call everything is media hype cycle to me. So, like, what the media hype cycle is saying, it's because of AI, when I think if you are anywhere in business, in HR, you know that in 2021, there was such a mass overhiring of people and talent because there was a war
Right.
for talent. And is that just right sizing? So that's like question 1. Are we really just right sizing where we needed to be and using AI as the scapegoat? And then number 2, that disparate impact on HR leaders who are sitting in the seat where they're being told, like, okay, we're laying off 4,000 people tomorrow. What was the company that just got a text message about it? That was like this past week. They sent,
Oh, I don't know.
oh gosh, it'll come to my mind. And if not, I'll put it in.
Cisco? Was it Cisco?
No, it was literally like they laid off, gosh, it's not coming to my head, by text message. Everybody
Mm,
got a text message if you were laid off this week. Yeah, look it up because I literally it was all over Reddit, and I was like, the people that even at Omnicom, they laid off 4,000 people December 1st. This recent wave was their over 40 layoffs, and that was effective on March 1st. And
Mhm.
it's such a challenge to have I don't know how you manage that kind of communication. I don't know how you keep it contained.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Oracle maybe? It's
Might have been
6 AM
Oracle.
email?
Yes, yes, it was
That's the
Oracle.
one?
Thank you.
'Cause it seems pretty common when I Google searched it, it's like, "Here's a company that did this, and here's a Amazon did it this." I'm like, "Okay, maybe this is becoming a trend." I wonder if the one thing I've been thinking about, I actually vibe coded a solution to be like, who's laying off people? Like, there was that remember that one, it was layoffs.fyi or something like that, started tracking layoffs and other things, like, I wonder if people are keeping receipts. Like, are they yeah, and I wonder if listen, again, go back to my above statement, most CEOs, most companies are rewarded for short-term, financial gains, and so they're gonna do what they do. I just wonder if people are keeping receipts or, it'll be like, Ted Lasso goldfish, like, they'll forget in 10 seconds, or not. I'm just curious, like, sort of like Klarna, a perfect example of like, hey, we're laying everybody off for AI, and then they're hiring. Like, are those people who are like, hey, I'm not going to join you again because you're only going to lay me off when you get this shit right? Like, are people? I'm just curious to know if people
How
are
does
keeping
the and
receipts.
how do the people that used to work there, there used to be a lot of, I never had them, but a lot of leverage in the like X Amazon, X AWS, X Block, whatever. Like, are people that used to represent those companies when they were, when they had a different persona, are they starting to look at that and say like, maybe I'll take that off, and not
The X
that reputational pull isn't actually what it used to
and
be. And now, I think at the end of the day, today it's not about receipts, because in my mind, the job market is so much in a cluster, especially for HR people, um, tech teams, where they just cannot even find opportunity, um, that I have to assume if you've got an offer for a job, you're gonna take that job offer.
yeah,
It's just
yeah, it's leverage, right? Yep, yep, exactly. If you don't have it, and that's what I said. Even in that transform panel, like, when I came into the workforce, there was no leverage. Like, you get what you get, and you don't get upset, and there was just no, and that's wrong or right, and I said it in the panel, like, I'm excited about this generation because they just don't they'll call you out. I wonder if that's gonna change over time because it's like once you call out and you're fired, you have no work, you're not producing, like, you're not getting that Starbucks, latte.
yeah.
Uh, by the way, speaking of Disney, like, every Disney property, we went to, Universal because we hadn't been there as a family. My family, my wife specifically loves Disney, is a big Disney person, and the kids, like, we've kind of just every other year been there. I'm fine with it. I mean, I walk into Disney and my wife gets annoyed with me, but I analyze it. I analyze the experience. I'm thinking of it from like an HR operator perspective. I'm like, how do they keep it clean? And like, what's going on here? And how do they know how many drinks and carts to put out? And like, there's a whole, and I used to have a former colleague that worked in as a VP of technology of parks. And he would always tell me like, there's a whole algorithm. And so I walk in there like more fascinated, of the experience from a business perspective. So, and of course, Disney is all about the experience, and then you go to Universal, and it's almost like the B team,
Mm.
not the people, but the experience. But they've done a really incredible job. It's just it's just interesting to see how all of this is moving so quickly, and all these experiences are changing. But anyway, it's just a very cool experience to be down there.
Funny, I've never been, but I know people that have worked there, and the thing that the story that always fascinated me, and it goes into sort of the desire for HR to build deep culture. And Angela Cheng Chemini, I know you know her through Troop HR, but she did a session
Sure.
at the Troop HR retreat last year on not just employee engagement, but having inspired employees, and how
Mm,
much 25x experience you get out everybody's experience is 25x when you have that inspired employee. And the story I always remember is the cleaning man who's going around and he's using his wand and he's making smiley faces in the ground just to like make a child laugh. And you think, like, what on earth, what kind of empowerment and training and sense of joy in the hiring process and in the building process? Because on the back end, I hear it is quite directive. But you
Yes.
never see that on the front end. You see happy employees, happy to serve
It's
cli.
all intentional. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things actually I when I was building Fresh Direct in New York, online grocer, very quick, one of the things that I've always employed was the advisors of folks outside and usually like steps above me. And it's been an incredible unlock for me. I like to refer it, and I steal this from Scott Galloway, but like a, a, a Swiss Army knife of advisors. And so one of my advisors, I had two advisors, one Vinny Stabile, who was the founder, not founder, he was the head CPO, chief people officer at JetBlue. He has since passed away. And then Artie Nathan, who also was the head of HR for Wynn Resorts, like was Steve Wynn's right hand person for HR and all the different, so scale, growth, that kind of thing. But I also had a friend that was at Disney, like I said, and I went down there and I was like, I'm just struggling with retention of folks in a warehouse that's cold or whatever it is, and they put me through their recruiting experience, and they have what they call the knockout video. So they, to your point, they start very early and they're like, they're very prescriptive and descriptive, and like, this is what you're going to be dealing. You have to work at night or the weekends. You're going to have to wear this uniform. Sometimes it's a little goofy, literally, figuratively. Like, and by the way, if you don't like any of this, like, get up and walk out.
Yeah.
Because of it, and it's kind of, Zappos had a very similar thing where they paid you to
Yeah.
get out. And like it starts there, I guess. Like, and to me, it's like it's scaling. It's that scaling of culture and being intentional in
But
every, like that. Think about the thought process. Like you have to think of every step of the process. Yeah,
well, and they, of course, and speak going back to Danny Meyer, New York, major, Shake Shack, all these, amazing restaurants,
sure,
uh, Gramercy Tavern, and his, like, playbook for employees is, I wanna say it's called the red table or at the table, and everything in there centers around employee first. This idea of clarity on what the job is, and when you talk about Disney in that way, it is about like, "Hey, we're not just gonna paint you the pretty picture of what it is, but you're gonna get hot as shit in an outfit that is gonna be 100 degrees outside. Are you gonna be able to
right,
handle that?" And there is a transparency of what the experience really is and, like, preparing people, and I think that's kind of a piece that not every company maybe even understands, you know,
right,
what
or
the
cares about.
yeah, or cares about, but, like, what are the greatest things that you're gonna experience, but also what are the times you're gonna feel like you're in total hell?
Right, exactly. And we brought in, like, we actually took that knockout, we didn't do a knockout video of Fresh Direct, but instead of interviewing folks in a warm conference room, or we had, almost like I would almost like call it a theater, we actually started interviewing people in the cold warehouse. And if we saw you shaking, or we're like, "Listen, if this is not for you, then you can, you can leave after the session." And so it just brought the experience front and center, and it actually reduced our turnover by 20 or 25%, like
That's
huge,
amazing.
significant, like we had high turnover. And typically in those roles, you see that. But it was because of that kind of knockout philosophy, and the intentionality of it was really interesting. But I wonder, like, that connection, like Danny Meyer sees it as a way to do better business and get better business results. You have to start there. You have to
Yeah.
start with that element. And I guess Disney too.
Well, Philip Morris used to do that too. They used to do panel interviews where all the panelists were smoking. If you
Yeah,
had
and
and if you had a negative response, you didn't get an offer. We used to have
That one I'm okay with.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We used to have do a ton of college recruiting, and we used to hear from our candidates. This is early 2000s. They were like, "Oh, I interviewed at Philip Morris." I'm like, "Okay." So what do you wanna leave our listeners with this week, Anthony? What's like a good thought starter or something for them to consider?
I think it keeps coming back to this. What is, ha what is the equation? What's the answer on AI? And it keeps coming back to a book I read when I was starting down this AI road. We went through this before, although AI was more behind a curtain 10, 15 years ago, where ChatGPT brought it to the forefront of everyone's peripheral. But it was when these economic professors went out after Ken Jennings lost to IBM Watson in Jeopardy, and everyone's like, the machines are taking over. And the two economic professors from MIT went out and said, all right, is it humans? Is it people? Who's going to take over? What's going to happen? And it was in a book called Race Against the Machine. And it's a love story. And I think, you know, how do we continue to perpetuate this? And it's hard because you're, again, this the investors and the boards are going, what are you doing around AI? Why aren't you laying off people? And then you see layoffs and stock prices go up and eventually they'll come down. But like, how do you navigate as an HR person this space of pressure to bring AI, but also the pressure to be like, AI is taking over everything and we should be firing people? And it's just a hard, here we are again, like COVID, hard place for HR people to be. Let's just give all safety instructions to HR folks. Like, here we are again. And I've been a big proponent of like, let's push AI to the people function for your organization, because I think it's that love story. I think it's people and AI is going to be the answer. Question is like, how do we navigate this as HR leaders? How do we navigate this as business leaders, against like what you call the media outlet that's, you know, Disney prepares for more layoffs, and Jassy is saying bet big on AI, and Block lays off people, and stock price, like all this sort of stuff happening. Like, it just seems like a lot for HR folks to handle. And how do we do that together?
Well, part of us doing this, I think, is in my perspective about an intention to share, like, what our everyday HR team leaders, what do we need to be thinking about? What do we need to be considering? And I guess I would leave it with saying there are a lot of stories coming out. There are stories about data breaches and security, and for me, it's arming people with the questions to ask or the information to share that puts them in a position of being able to say, I am a thought leader on this topic. I'm not here to wait to be told. I am exploring and trying to understand, and I get it. I've been in the shoes, I've been in the seat. There's a lot of other shit flying around, but
Yeah.
that doesn't preclude you from having this responsibility to do that, and I know many, many HR leaders feel that deeply. So figuring out the places that you can find moments of learning, share with your team and leadership around what the impact of this is for you and your own organization, being a AI, growing your fluency, I guess I would say, in order so that you can help your team do that and then thus help your organization. Because let me tell you, as much as we want the people team to lead the AI charge, which I agree with fully, I can't do that if I can't speak to terminology, if I can't speak to function, if I can't really have explored it or used it myself. And so I think
I
that's a
love that.
big part of it. Well,
I
thank you,
love that.
Anthony. This was a great
Yeah.
conversation. I'll see you.
Episode number 2. Yeah.